In today's episode, I speak with Sarah Gregg, a psychologist, coach, and author of books Find Your Flow and Choose Happy. We also have the pleasure of speaking with Jill Ritchie, an accredited life coach, energy healer, and host of award-winning She Loves Herself podcast. Together, they're the founders of the Intuitive Psychology Association. How are you today?
Yeah, we're really excited to be here. It's just great. I love the title of the podcast, the self-development podcast. I think I can speak for both me and Jill when we say like we are self-development junkies, like just love this work. And yeah, we're excited to dive into the conversation and hopefully share a few bits of insight and wisdom that maybe people haven't heard before.
That is the name of the game. I mean, that is always what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to find people's perspectives. And I think if you're open to listening to other people, you'll always learn and evolve and develop and get different perspectives and keep climbing the ladder of your self-development. So, I'm excited. For those that might not have come across you yet, do you want to tell people a bit about yourselves?
Well, my name is, as Johnny said, is Jill Ritchie, and I am, yeah, self-development junkie, really. I got into my real sort of personal development about 6.5, almost 7 years ago. Prior to that, I was in corporate leadership for 21 years, so had never meditated in my life. And then at 37, I left my corporate job, probably the worst version of myself. Completely stressed, burnt out, two young children, a big mortgage and heavy weight of responsibility that I carried. But I felt like at the time everyone around me was like that. No one I knew. I mean, self-development has evolved so much in the last few years. When I started, I didn't know anyone that did meditation classes. I didn't know anyone that was really reading those types of books, that worked with a life coach. And I started working with a coach, and it was more of a spiritual coach. I wanted to go down the more holistic self-development path. I felt like it was never really surface level work I wanted to do. I felt like my whole life had worked on the surface of everything and looked outside of myself to meet an internal need. And it never worked for me for 37 years. So I knew there was something more, didn't know what it was, but through working with a coach and really unearthing so many parts of myself that I didn't even know existed, because at that time, to be honest, there were so many masks. I didn't know who I was. And I think a lot of people find that they fall into this because they're on a journey themselves, they're facing challenges themselves. And I worked with an incredible coach and healer, and then I just knew that was my calling. I knew that was what I was here to do. It was like this. People talk about divine intervention. That was what happened to me. I'd never felt anything like that before. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew that this was it. And I was so scared. I had so much imposter syndrome to leave a corporate leadership role and have huge responsibilities to start with from scratch, start from the bottom up. Was a huge risk, but I knew the risk was bigger to stay where I was. And so I worked with various different coaches and healers, and I immersed myself in going on my journey first, and then creating a business from it, getting my accreditation, working more with the deeper work, the shadow work, and created a really amazing business from it. And then worked with incredible people, athletes, celebrities, um, ran sellout retreats. And that was mind blowing for me to be able to do something like that, age 38, um, and actually know that that is possible. And then Sarah and I knew each other. We started connecting when I started my journey, and we always said we wanted to work together and create something. And every time we sat down to do something, intuitively, it just wasn't the right time. We were both working on different things, but we connected every week. We were kind of accountability partners for each other. And Sarah was one of the people that I really trusted in the industry. There's a lot of great people in the industry, but there's a lot of toxic rubbish in the industry as well, unfortunately, and that frustrated me. Sarah was not one of those people. She was one of those people that I could really talk to about anything, that I trusted. And hopefully she says the same about me. And then IPA was created in 2023. It was like, wow. that was just, again, one of those moments where I was at a difficult period in my life. My mum had passed away, and I let go of work for almost 6 months just to really heal, to go on that journey of grief and immerse myself in grief. And people might think, well, why would you do that? I needed to look at those parts of myself that I could never have accessed when I was in the busy mum, busy business owner mode. So I let everything go and really trusted that something more would come in through. And of course, IPA came through from that. And I'll let Sarah introduce more about herself, but that's kind of a version of where I was and where I and where I got to now, I guess.
I mean, I just want to say to Sarah, please agree, because otherwise it'll get really awkward, you
I
know?
know it's going to be super awkward if I'm like, well, actually, Jill. No,
Yeah.
it's
No, but thank you so much for that, Jill. And you know, I resonate with so much that you said there, you know, and there's this, I don't know if you call it a proverb or a fable, but it's this: son looks to their father and says, Dad, every year you get smarter and smarter. And it's actually not the father that's getting smarter, it's the kid's awareness. And I think that's what self-development's like, isn't it? It's like you want to hurry things along. You want to get to the end. You want to be developed, right? Never realizing that you're probably never going to be,
Yeah.
because as you get up the next step, you're aware of more and more, you know, and that's the way it works, you know. But thank you for that. That was lovely to listen to. Well, yeah, apart from obviously the things with your mother there. Sarah, please be
yeah.
kind.
I will be kind. It's a mutual love affair between me and Jill. Definitely. We instantly connected with each other and our shared passion for self-development and the work that it achieves in our own lives and the lives of others, and the ripple effect and impact. And to anyone listening to this, if you're on that self-development journey, I just want to take an opportunity to applaud you, because this work is difficult, and getting to that place, Johnny, that you said, of deep acceptance that we're in this state of continual evolution and that it never stops, and surrendering to that process is hard. And if you're in the midst of your own personal work, you know, hang in there. Like it pays off in dividends. But when you're in that um murky, dark place where it feels like, is there going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, it can feel really hard. Um and I know that to be true from multiple parts of my journey, but I think the most pivotal part for me is not dissimilar to Jill in so many in a lot of ways. I think that's why we instantly connected. Like Jill, I was fixated with fixing the outside world in order to make me happy. I just thought, if I could rearrange different parts, or if I could just have that or achieve this, then I would be complete, I would be whole, I would be happy. And for me in 2017, pushing my own intuition and authentic self to the side really caught up with me in a big way. I remember going to bed at night and like climbing into bed and like feeling the crisp kind of like cold bed sheets. You know, it was in the middle of winter time, and snuggling in, and just this voice in my head, this incessant little whisper that was gradually getting louder, that said, like, there has to be more to life than this. Like, is this really it? Am I just running myself into the ground every day, pleasing, performing, perfecting, being everything to everyone and nothing to myself, and truly not really knowing who I was or what I like to do? And I also felt this deep layer of shame and guilt, because my background is in psychology. At this stage, I was working for a large university, working with them in a business coaching capacity. I had been on a self-development journey. I knew this stuff. And so there was this huge blanket of guilt and shame as to, how do I own up that I've misused this work in a way? I've tried to take shortcuts with it. I've, you know, been in that hustle culture and set goals and tried to change my behavior, and actually none of it's working. And I felt like I was on a treadmill and I didn't know how to get off. And my solution, and I'm not saying that this is a solution that everyone should take, but for me, it felt like the only option was to hit the emergency stop button. And so in 2017, I quit my job, sold my house, sold all of my stuff, my car, the saucepans, the the plates, my clothes, everything that I had worked so hard for, and left with a backpack and a laptop and a blank canvas. I had no idea as to what I was going to do. I didn't feel like I was in a position to continue my career in coaching or psychology. Um, because I just felt so lost. I really, really didn't know who I was. And so I went on this incredible journey. A bit like Jill, I didn't meditate because I was absolutely terrified to be alone with my thoughts. The idea of sitting alone with my thoughts, no, thank you. You could not pay me to do that. And yet I found myself living with monks in Thailand and learning how to meditate. I threw myself into the deeper work. And the transformation was incredible, both in terms of how I felt about life, but also the more my inner world changed and the more I aligned with my authenticity. And the byproduct of that was my outer world changed in the most incredible ways. And I went from um, a laptop, no idea as to what I was doing, starting a really small blog, which honestly about I think 50 people on a good day read, and just it just so happened that one of those readers was an editor for a large book publishing house in New York City. And she read one of my posts and reached out to me and said, I love this. I think this is a book deal. Do you want to pitch for a book? And I thought that was a complete scam. And it wasn't. And I found myself then in a position where Find Your Flow was published in 2020. I held a book launch in New York City. And my life completely changed. I set up my own business. I ran that online, and traveled the world for over 7 years, living in Copenhagen, Taiwan, Malaysia, Bali, Portugal. Um, and I think that is when you go deep with this work. Um, the results are incredible. I always remember this line from The Alchemist, which is a book by Paul Coelho. And there's a quote in that, and it says, you know, when you really align with yourself, the whole universe like conspires to help you. And I do think that when we have that courage and we can return to that courage to really be our authentic selves and drop the masks, um, and we return home to who we know ourselves to be, the rewards that you receive are a byproduct, and it's not the reason to do that, and I want to be clear on that. But honestly, you live in this deep place of alignment. You get to do what you're meant to do in the world, and it's an incredible journey to go on that, like you said at the start, never ends.
I mean, there's this quote. It's the harder you work on yourself, the luckier you become. You know,
Oh, I love that
you
quote.
know,
Oh, I'm
and
stealing that.
it's just it's so true. It's like you spend so much time avoiding things because it's obvious, right? That's where the pain is. It's like
Really.
touching the bruise, touching the boo boo, whatever you want to call it. And then one day you look into it and you realize that actually that's where all the answers are. You know, I say to clients quite often, you know, imagine there's a big bush in front of you. It's got loads of thorns and barbed wire and all this stuff in there. And I say to you, everything you need's on the other side of that. And people spend all their time looking for a gap in the hedge, looking for a space, when actually sometimes the only way to get there is to climb over. And yes, you'll get cut and bruised and it will hurt and it'll be painful and you'll want to give up and all of those different things. That's life. That's part of the journey. Life is messy, complicated, confusing, contradicting, all of them different things. But when you get to the other side, it's everything you want, you know?
Yeah.
Well, not everything. Sometimes you go there and you go,
Yeah,
right,
you're
is it how I'm
there.
gonna go over there now? Yeah. But thank you both for sharing that. You're both incredible. Really are. Like there's some really incredible journeys you've been on. And I know that was like the short version, but I can hear how much you would have learned from all of that. You know, just small part of those journeys is a whole story and podcast within itself, right? So I didn't want that to get missed, as I appreciate just how much growth must have gone into every one of them situations. Um,
Thank you.
and now you work together and you have the Intuitive Psychology Association, which is just, you know, I love that name. I think it's everything, that name. It really is. It's everything. But, you know, for people that might not be sure what that means, what does that mean? What is intuitive psychology?
So intuitive psychology is a combination of your intuition and psychology. So intuitive psychology is your innate ability to know, trust, and heal, underpinned by the theory, research, and science of psychology. And we created this because we really felt that there was a gap in the modalities that we were seeing. People were either really firmly in the scientific camp and an evidence based approach, or they were at the other end of the spectrum and very much in the spiritual realm. And we don't view either one of those as separate. In fact, we think that the magic happens in the meeting point. So
Yeah.
we're kind of a little bit of nerd and a little bit of magic combined together, really, is how I would describe it.
I love that.
Um, and it's a really powerful approach to self-development, where we are very, very passionate about this. You know, we train coaches. We're accredited by the Association for Coaching rather. We train our coaches to the highest level possible, which is diploma level. And a big part of our coaching approach is to really enable clients to deeply connect to their intuition, their natural channel of guidance, this direct knowledge that we all have within us. You know, we have all the answers within. It's just a case of opening that guidance and letting that trust flow in. And then this is underpinned by an evidence based approach that really helps sustain those new patterns and new ways of being and creates a bit more ease and flow around that change.
I absolutely love that explanation. That gave me full body goosebumps because you're so right. You know, I'm not one to criticize anybody. I don't waste my efforts on that, but I do sometimes worry about coaches that feel that it's their job to give advice or to guide people or to tell people how to live their lives. That worries me. It concerns me because, you know, I've had troubles with addiction, and my addiction journey has many hallmarks of other people's, but it's not the same, you know, and I'm always very aware of that when I'm talking to people. There might be things I really resonate with, but I don't know that person's life. I don't know that person's values. They might not even know their values. You know, they might have adopted their parents' preferences instead of values. You don't know, do you? You know? So it's about investigating by listening, and allowing that client to explore and to ask intelligent questions that get them to go deeper, not further away, you know? And a lot of that is done through intuition. Yes, there is science, but and science is valuable, very valuable, but it's not a one size fits all. Sometimes there's nuances that change things. Sometimes there's things that people aren't aware of that they can't bring into the room because they don't have the language yet. And all of that is so important, and you guys have nailed that. Absolutely. That combination is just perfect, I think. And I think it can be really helpful to a lot of people. And I'm so glad you're training people. That makes me happy to hear.
Well,
I'm very happy to hear, you
you're
know.
so happy as well, Johnny. I think that the biggest part of our training, and there's so many things that make it very different, but one of the things that allows us to really, we believe allows us to tap into our intuition is closing down our eyes and really connecting with the body. A lot of the time, there's so much information out there when our eyes are open. We're just really looking outside of ourselves. And what makes us really different in IP and how we train is that most of our techniques that we train in is eyes closed work, which means that we actually allow the client to close down the eyes, to connect with the body, to work with parts of the body, as opposed to being in that personal thinking mind a lot of the time. And that's really powerful. And what we do see is when we see this to people, we also need to make sure that the nervous system is regulated enough, because if our clients don't have a regulated nervous system when we ask them to close down their eyes, it can also trigger a trauma response for them. So much of the work we do is with the body, with the nervous system in mind. And I believe that the world is craving this right now. Coaching, and like yourself, we don't like to talk about other people, but the coaching industry, it's not, a lot of it isn't fit for purpose now. The demand of people is for more. And just looking at a goal and doing external things to achieve that goal is missing a whole piece. And what we do within IPA is we work with the whole person, the past, the present, and the future. And that's what makes us really, really unique. And the results that we're seeing already with our coaches who are, even through their training, the results that they were getting from the case studies that they're working with is absolutely phenomenal. Now, Sarah and I knew this because this is how we work, but we were only two people doing this. And you can only sort of maybe run coaching programs and allow people to feel this. But how do we, for us, when we created this, it was so emotional for us because we knew it was so much bigger than Sarah and I. It's like, how do we take this out to the world and train the best coaches in these world-class techniques that actually empower people to heal their life? And we knew that this will be here when Sarah and I aren't here. It's so much bigger than just Sarah and I. We were the lucky ones that got this, and it was channeled to us. But it's for everyone. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And hopefully your listeners will get this, as I'm sure they will if they're a fan of your podcast. But when a lot of the time the mind doesn't make sense of it, that there's this deep knowing that there's this path that you need to go on to be that guide and to help other people. That's definitely been something that's been so huge for us when we've created IP, and it's been work. And we're not going to sit here and say, oh, we meditated on it and then everything just fell into place. We are real. It took work, hours, commitment, tears. It's been at points a labor of love to create this, but our why with this was so much stronger than our fear and our doubt. And that's the thing that's pulled us through. There was never a question of, we're not going to do that, even in the moments where it's taken a lot of us, a lot from us. Sarah had to let go of her other pieces of her business. I've had to let go of a business that was thriving and really release that. And releasing that, I've released little parts of ego again and attachment. When you think you've worked on a layer, you're like, here we go again. I need to let go of that identity that I had attached to that other business because there's a bigger purpose for us both. And it's really just trusting that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that about the ego as well, because it's so funny, isn't it? A lot of the time we think the ego is out in a voice, but actually our ego is always trying to guide us towards comfortable, and comfortable is not always what's best for us, is it? And it's that understanding of it. But I mean, again, you mentioned about trying to make sense of the mind and stuff, and I think sometimes that's emotions, isn't it? Emotions don't really follow logic, they don't follow rules, they just do the emotion. That's all they do. They know how to do that, and they let you feel it, and there's a message in there somewhere, and quite often you might not like what that message has to say, so you'll ignore it or misinterpret it or whatever. But emotions don't have that logic. And what else I hear as well is, much like myself, and I think one of the reasons I resonate, like, you've given me goosebumps far too many times already. And I think one of the reasons is because you're truth seekers. You're looking for what's true. You're not looking to be right, wrong. You're not looking to be the smartest person in the room. You're looking for what's true, because we can't, if we don't build off of truth, what are we doing? We're building off of half-truths, lies, creative narratives, which I understand. I'm compassionate and empathetic towards that. Some things are so difficult that we have to build this narrative in order to stay safe and feel safe and secure, but it's still not true. And that's where it starts to get a bit tricky, doesn't it? Because if we want to believe something so badly, we will. And that becomes a little bit dangerous for people. So again, just want to reiterate, I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I'm so pleased to see that you're training people and it's going so well. And I can't only imagine how hard it was to give up some of that labor of love of your own businesses. That must have been tough. That must have been very, very tough. So, congratulations, I think is the right word, because,
Thank you.
that must have been really difficult. But you've mentioned shadow work and things like that before. Some people might not really understand it. I think there's lots of different ways and aspects of looking at shadow work, and it often gets confused with other things. I wondered if you guys could clear that up for me and sort of help the listeners understand what it is and how it works.
Yeah, of course. Shadow work, I think whenever we hear that term, sometimes it sounds like a dark and murky and scary place. So it is not. That's the first kind of myth that we want to bust. Shadow, really, if we think about our awareness, so imagine your awareness as a spotlight. And if that spotlight is shining on something, then we can see it. But outside of that awareness is a shadow, is the part that we can't see. It's the part that's not visible in our awareness. And this is where so much of your hidden potential lies. Often we can only really work with the things that we're aware of. So imagine that there were beliefs um, and past learned behaviours that are encoded into your consciousness, but you're unconscious of them. They're in your shadow. You can't see them. And because you can't see them, you can't work with them because you're not aware of them. And often when our shadow is prevalent, it is running the show. So Carl Jung is a very famous psychologist. He's a depth psychologist, and he coined the term shadow. And he said that, until we make the unconscious conscious, we will call it fate. So we just reside ourselves to the fact that this is fate. This is just how it is. I just keep on, finding myself in these particular scenarios and situations. Um, and actually, that's your shadow. So when we bring our shadow into our awareness, our choice and our ability to make different choices really rapidly expands.
Yeah, I mean that's a absolutely brilliant explanation. I love the spotlight and the shadow. That makes perfect sense, and I hope that helps for the listeners understand as well. Because I think sometimes it gets confused with aspects of the dark triad and narcissism and psychopathy and all them different things. When actually, and who knows, maybe in your shadow work there is some of that, but
Yeah.
that's not essentially what it means, is it? You know?
I was just going to say, underneath the shadow, and something that we're really passionate about when we explain it and when we work with it, is those parts of us that we have hidden and suppressed. So anger, shame, pain, all of those things are in our shadow, and we almost make them separate from us, but they are not separate from us. They are part of us, and we are a whole person. And if you're a human being living in this human world that we're living in, you're going to have shadow, right? And because when we're born, we don't tend to have so much shadow. It's a lot of things that, when we learn to trade our authenticity for attachment, because we don't speak when we want to speak. We don't want to speak our truth. And we learn to sort of suppress those emotions to please our caregivers or please people around us to fit in. And all of that's got to go somewhere. And what we really find when we actually work with the shadow is underneath it all is love. Underneath is this part that's like being exiled, and it's like, I'm angry, or there's so much here. But when we actually unlayer it, and we have this technique in IPA called unlayering, and when we go underneath it, we unlayer it, we get to wholeness, we get to essence, we get to love. And it's like when we're able to sit in the discomfort and be with that part and actually see that what's underneath, what's underneath, what's underneath, go under, and then it's like, boom, this almost, whew, okay, it's the emotion that comes. It's like, it's fear. I'm just scared. What does fear need? Fear needs love. What does shame need? Shame needs to be able to be expressed and to still be loved. But often we are looking for someone outside of us to meet that need. But when you can meet shame and actually hold it and understand why or whatever that is, and go underneath it and hold all of these emotions and immerse it in love for yourself, when you get to the true love, the true essence and the core, you can give that to yourself. Suddenly, you don't need that from anyone else, right? Because you're able to hold that for yourself. You're able to get underneath the shadow and see what's underneath it. Like, when you're a kid and it's in the dark and it's like, oh, but when you turn the light on, it's not so bad. Maybe it just needs a bit of tidying up, right? And I almost liken it to a bit of that. I think some people then try and numb out, and it's like, well, if I just excel at this other thing, or if I achieve this other thing, then I'm going to be worthy, and then I'm not going to be bad girl or bad boy anymore. I'm not going to be not good enough. Never works. We get a short hit, and then it's like back into the, oh God, I still feel unworthy. I still don't feel good enough. Why? Because we need to be able to go underneath that layer and meet that need for ourselves. And that is the work that we teach, because that's what really allows you to heal your life.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I often ask clients, what happened the last time you said that this thing was going to change everything, that this thing you were searching for, because we put the goalpost there and we think when we get there that everything's going to be okay. not realizing that external goal was always an internal goal. We were moving in the wrong direction. It makes me think of Carl Rogers' work on conditions of worth and organismic valuing systems. All of that stuff about when we're between 1 and 7 or whatever it is, where we take on other people's values or their preferences. This is what I meant earlier when I said it, and we make that our life and who we are. Is so difficult. It's the meaning that we apply to things, isn't it? And that's why a lot of time when I try to get clients, or I'm sure you do as well, to start to think about themselves, and they feel like they start saying, oh, how narcissistic they are. And other people might say that. I've had clients before, and when they stop doing everything for everybody else and they start doing things for themselves, all of a sudden the word narcissist gets thrown around. And it's like, well, is that what's going on? Or is that just somebody complaining because they don't like your boundaries that you've got now, And that's why it's so hard, because there are people in our life that love us and we love them, and they may not do it on purpose, but your relationship with them changes. I'm sober. I've been sober for 3 years. And had you have told me some of the friends that I no longer see would not be in my life anymore, I might not have done it, because I'd have been scared to lose them. But that is part of the journey, and they're on their journey and you're on yours. And I totally resonate with everything you said there. It's just such a brilliant explanation. I'm going to keep repeating myself if I'm not careful. So I'll ask my next question. But I mean, so you've really beautifully explained the whole shadow work thing. So why would somebody need their shadow work, and how would it benefit them? So why would they need it? What's a scenario a common scenario perhaps that people might need that shadow work?
Yeah. Okay. So a common scenario, well, it can be anything. This is the great thing about shadow work. It's universal to all of us. We all have a shadow. So for some people, that shadow might show up where perhaps in your career or your life, you want to work towards a particular goal. Maybe that's a career goal. And you think, I know that I'm capable for more. I want to set up that business. I want to go for that promotion. But something's holding you back. You find yourself self-sabotaging. You find yourself procrastinating. You find yourself, even though the intention is really strong, the actions don't align with the intention. Maybe you have a health goal and you're so motivated and you're like, I'm going to do this, and I understand all the benefits and I'm doing it for me. And it comes from a place of, internal motivation, but yet the actions don't align. That if you have a case like that where the intention is there, but the actions aren't, and there's a misalignment, it's normally a sign that the shadow is active in the background. Like we said, then that means that the unconscious subconscious is running the show. Even though your conscious mind is saying, yeah, let's do this. Like, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to take that bold action. I'm going to make myself feel uncomfortable. I feel totally safe to do that. And yet you find yourself veering off in the opposite direction. That's because a different part of your consciousness is at play and is outside of your awareness. And it's by moving into that and recognize that it's safe to go to that area and to look at it. And like you said, you compared it earlier, like to the thorny bush, it's like it's going into that place that maybe feels a little bit uncomfortable because it's not in your awareness. You're not really sure what's going to come up. But ordinarily, and what we find is that there is an unmet need, that the subconscious, unconscious is running it because it knows how to keep you safe. It's kept you safe all over the years. Every part of us that develop always has a positive intention, even the most destructive behaviors. You've talked about addiction, for example. Addiction keeps us safe. Like, it keeps us safe. It protects a part of you. Its intention is totally positive. The results, though, can be disruptive and create a lot of hurt and pain, like in lives. But the intention is love. The intention is to protect you from something. And often the things that keep us safe in life end up controlling us, and they're the things that eventually suffocate us. They're the things that keep us small. They're the things that stop us evolving. And so when a shadow is at play, it's where intention doesn't align with action. And that is a sign that there is something else going on in another area of your consciousness, which is why when it comes to self-development work, it's about working with all parts of your consciousness. It's about working with all parts of you, past, present, and future, and not just relying on the logical brain to say, I'll set that action, I'll do that, and then I'll change. That's a huge expectation to place on yourself. And it's not really the way that our mind works.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. When I moved out of my family home when I was 16, 17 years old, I remember going back to the family home and helping them helping my brothers. We used to be three of us in a room, and I remember helping them redecorate their bedroom. And I was taking some wallpaper off the wall, and I saw some writing on the wall. It was right where my bed used to be, and it said, "My name's Johnny. I'm 8 years old, and I want to die." And it was a really sad moment for me. But at the time, I don't know what I wasn't able to really see what that was, and it wasn't until later on in life when I brought that to a therapy session that I was able to find compassion for my drinking, because what that taught
Mhm.
me, and the therapist said to me, "Congratulations for finding a way to stay alive," because my pain had been there from easily as early as 8. It was written on the wall, literally, and it was like my inner child speaking to me. It was surreal. It was like my little inner child saying, "This has been here a while, Johnny. It's time to sort this out." And of course I drank, because I was outsourcing my emotional regulation. I wasn't able to deal with these difficult emotions, and I mistook all of those things for cravings when they were just reactions. It was a reaction. Drinking was my only known way of solving that problem for myself. So, I really relate to that a lot. Yeah, a lot. So thank you for
Mhm.
sharing it that way. Um,
No, thank you for sharing that story. That's like really powerful. And um, I think it is that bit, we're so hard on ourselves in life, and we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think the default position for so many of us is like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, like I'm bad. Um, and underneath all of that is that protection system. It's just love, as Jill said, it's that unlayering that bit. And you as part of our work with our coaches, we go back in and we thank that part. We thank it for keeping us safe, for loving us, for finding a way, that the best way that they could find possible in that moment. And it's that return back home and that opportunity to unlearn everything and to peel back those layers and give yourself that chance to be authentically you. And I think that story honestly is so touching
So
and so moving.
it was a changing moment for me, because I said it so flippantly to my therapist, and she sort of went, she had tears in her eyes, and she went, "We need to talk about that." And now I
yeah.
look back and I think, yeah, no shit. But at the time, I was like, why? It's just so sad how unaware I was at the time. But I mean, I suppose it'd be easy, and maybe there are similarities. Maybe it's the same. I don't know. I would get you to answer that question. But inner child work and shadow work, there's a lot of similarities. Is it the same thing? Is it different? What would you say to that, Jill?
Yeah, there is a
Go with
lot
Jill.
of similarities. I think there's a million mine. That's what's going on here. There is a lot of similarities. I think the shadow plays out when there's inner child work required a lot of the time. So it's like and I would say, but someone asked me this actually, what would you say is the most, like the biggest thing? I get asked this a few times. And I would say about 95% of the time it's inner child, because we learn to mask at such a young age. We learn to, as Sarah says, please, perform, perfect, or contort, or be quiet, or be loud, whatever that is. And then we take on this label of, oh, you're too loud, or oh, you're too quiet, or you're not smart enough. Oh. And the comparisons that we have, even at school, it's like, I'll remind you of a story of this story that happened. And I never thought about it until I started doing this work. And I remember being at my little boy's full sports day, and I've got two boys, and they're very different. And one of them, the older one now, I think he was maybe only about 8 or 9 at the time, and he didn't like attention on himself. And he had to run in school sports day. And I don't know if you guys remember, at school sports day, all the parents come along to watch school sports day. It's outside, and all the kids have to run in all these different races. There's the sprint race, there's all these different things, right? Everyone, every teacher there, the whole school's there, and all the parents are there. That is a huge pressure on a child. And I remember my little boy just going to start running and just stops and walks. And the teacher was furious, right? I was like, he got in it. There's something like, why did he do that? And giving him into trouble. And then I remember my partner at the time was like giving him into trouble as well and say, you can't do that. You need to run. And the old me would have been like, oh, that's embarrassing. Why aren't you running? Like, for goodness sake, everyone's watching you. But in that moment, I stopped and I thought, hold on a minute. Like, he is feeling so much pressure from hundreds of people at 8 years old to watch him perform for all these people. And I also, at the same time, I watched this other girl who came last in the race. They were like, okay, you're first. This girl, she's last and you're last. And I thought, how shameful on these children is this? And I remember thinking, and I said to the teacher at the time, because she made the deal to phone us and talk to us about it. And I said, hold on, no one ever invites every parent and every member of the class to watch children go up and do maths on stage or go up and do English or recite spelling on stage. No one does it. And no one said, ha ha, you're last. Oh my goodness, everyone, let's put them in order. You're last. They never would do that. I mean, it's bad enough we do it in a classroom, but we would never invite hundreds of people to spectate that. And the shame that was put on them. And I thought, no wonder children struggle. And I had a bit of debate. That's another story with the school at the time. But I thought, no wonder we are trying to contort these children into this is the way you should be. And like, you should not have an opinion. And, I know that, there's so much guidance that we need to give children, but they learn. And I think it's so much worse when I was a child and when our parents were children. So they learn all of this. They learn to please, perform, perfect. And is it any wonder that people struggle to identify, like, who even am I? And when they struggle later on in life with certain things, it's because we don't really know. And this is quite a bold statement, but a lot of the time we don't know how to really parent. Because it's like, well, I learned from my mum and dad, and they learned from their mum and dad, who were also taught children should be seen and not heard. And they, so it's all filtered down, and we really take a lot of this on from our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors. It's not just from one, it's from a collective. And it's at that point where the brave ones, like yourself, Johnny, that are able to say, age 30 plus, do you know, I don't want to be like this anymore. I am going to go in and I'm going to work with these parts. And it takes a while. It's not a one and done, because when you unlayer one part, there's another part where all of a sudden you have a memory of, I was bullied when I was 4. Where did that come from? I thought, I didn't even remember that one. Or when I was crying over something, it's like, it's always, I believe, and Sarah, correct me if you think it's different. For me, 9.9 times out of 10, there's inner child work there, because that's when we learn to not be our most authentic self when we're younger. So that's when we have to go back and almost reparent that part and bring in safety of, I love you, you are enough. And it's not to blame parents. I truly believe that most of the time, the parents are trying to do their best with what they know and what they learn. But there has to be a point where we say, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go in and I can, and we can reparent, and we can unlearn, and we can relearn, and we can feel, and we can heal. And it's emotional and it takes work, but it is the most incredible work you can ever do for yourself. If you are looking to connect to your authenticity, to your true essence, to stop feeling worried about attachments to other people's situations and things, then that is the work of you choosing to go in and meet your inner child and meet your shadow.
Yeah, I mean, a long time ago, I used to work as a PT, and I often wondered to myself, like, when did it change from that young child that looks in the mirror with curiosity, licks the mirror, puts his hands all over, and is really curious about himself and all that and his body, to looking in the mirror and saying ugh, and grabbing parts of themselves and being disgusted. And it's that transference of, like, going from your authentic self to your conditioned self, the things that you learn. You should look like this, you should behave like that, you shouldn't be this, you should be that, and all of those things that come, and it doesn't give you any autonomy at all. doesn't allow you to make any choices because you're ignoring half of the options. And that story was
Mhm.
fantastic, and it's such a great mixing pot of ideas and stuff that relates to that exact thing. Because take it for example, imagine if the parents' sports day, and half of them would opt out, but the kids don't get the
Yeah.
option, do they? Oh, there's no way you're getting me running down there in front of all those people. It's not happening, But the kids
Mhm.
don't get a choice. I mean, that in itself is something significant, I think, So that's such a great analogy for it. Really good story to really bring that home. So thank you for sharing that. Last question before we start to wrap it up. I can't believe how quickly this has gone. It's mental. But there's going to be people out there, mainly blokes, I think, that are going to be like, you turn around to a bloke who's got a whole load of problems and clearly needs to do shadow work or inner child work. And you say to them, you need to do your shadow work and inner child work. And they look at you and they think, whatever, mate, you know? And they come up with all this, what a load of rubbish, what a load of this. And you meet all that resistance and they're never going to do it. And it feels very demasculating and blah, blah, blah. I mean, what do you say to those people? Because there's always going to be critiques of shadow work, always going to be critiques of inner child work. And how would you respond to that, to that type of person particularly?
I think that is a great question. I think it's all about the intention and it's relating it back and it's taking away the process of how we do it. The question really is, do you want to be your most authentic self? Do you want to live life fully? Do you want to expand your choices and enter into new realms of possibility? Do you want to free yourself from the past limiting beliefs that you know that you have? And do you want to do that in a way that is really sustainable, that doesn't require a huge amount of cognitive load and effort every day to be thinking, I need to do this and I've got to do this and I've got to prioritize and be in that real hustle, busy mindset? Or do you want to do it from a place of ease and flow because you know yourself and you can trust yourself and you can act from a place of alignment where you're not delaying gratification and reward and you're feeling the joyful path of the journey? If you want to do that and you want to achieve that, then the easiest and fastest route is to lean into your shadow and embrace the past, the present, and the future, and to work with all parts of yourselves. And I would find it really hard for any individual to say no to those questions because I think at the core, what we all want to do, what we all want is to be ourselves and to be accepted as ourselves and to accept ourselves. And if you really want to do that, then you can't ignore those other parts. And we have we have males and females that train with us. Two of our students, one in particular, Jordan, who's one of our intuitive psychology coaches in training, he works for a Premiership football club, and he's bringing this work into there, and we really champion him for
Wow.
doing that. Because it's an incredible place to have someone going into, a Premiership League football team and working with men on that level. We know that that work is needed. We don't understand that world fully because we haven't lived it in the way that other men have. Um, but we know that that work is needed, and we really want to empower everyone to access that regardless of where they're at, because that is the work. When you can heal the past and learn from the past, align in the present, then the compelling future takes care of itself. When we're in the present, always needing the future to be different, and we're always, I'm not there yet, that is a really heavy weight for you to carry. And when we can work with the shadow and ultimately alchemize it, because that our approach is the shadow alchemy method, we don't just keep you in the shadow, we work with it. And once you clear that energy and release it, you create space in your consciousness to invite in the new and to be like, okay, now that I've unlearned that part, now that I'm aware of that piece of me, what do I want to invite in? Because I've got space and capacity now. I'm not wrestling with myself all the time. I'm not at war with myself. I'm not spending all of my attentional energy hating myself, shaming myself, wondering why I'm not good enough yet. I, I've released that. So now I can channel my energy into what I really want as my authentic self, not what I think I should do, but what I know that I want to do. And I can carve out a joyful path and enjoy the process to get there in that place of continual evolution that we talked at the beginning.
I love that he's going into Premiership teams because that's where the role models are for the next generation of young boys
Yeah.
turning into men. And I think that's absolutely fantastic to hear that. It really is. because that is one of the things that I try really hard to do is, I straddle a border, and I don't even know how to articulate it, which is rare for me. But it's that like trying to speak to men as a man, uh, and not using too much language that's going to put them off, so that they then can't hear what I have to say. That's going to be hopefully
Exactly.
helpful. And it's hard. It's really difficult. And I know that men sit a lot in logic when I speak to them. There's a lot of, if it doesn't make sense to them, then it's just rubbish. That's their opinion anyway. And I try to find that. And I think you're absolutely right. If they don't go back and realize where these reactions, these behavioral triggers come from, then you're never going to have a full awareness of them. Therefore, you're not going to have the choice to do things differently. And I think
Mhm.
that's where that work is needed. And I wonder how that's going to happen. And I think it starts with businesses like yours and organizations like yours, putting it out there and growing. I mean, what you are now is incredible. What you'll be in 10 years, can't even imagine. Can't even imagine. Global, let's hope, Maybe, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe you're training people on the moon. Who knows?
Who
Mars,
knows?
whatever. I don't know where it'll
Who
go.
knows?
Let's see what Elon Musk does about that. Uh,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, we have to wrap it up now. This has been incredible. I could have done another hour easily. I've got stacks more questions, but we just answered the other questions so beautifully that we won't get time for them, unfortunately. But I will ask you both individually the question I always ask everybody: is there anything that you would like to pass on to other people that you think would help them with their self-development? And let's start with Jill.
Okay, so for me, it is do not let the forest or the bush, as you called it, the thorny one, don't let the forest overwhelm you. I think it's starting small, doing one thing to move the needle forward. You don't need to worry too much about where you think, like, I need to do all of this. It's too much. Start small, even if it's like just your breath work. Put a timer on your phone for 1 minute, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, then add another minute on and build it up. And if you think about doing something small every day, compound effect that has over a few months, it's phenomenal. Just start small, but make it a non-negotiable, because it should be a non-negotiable. You are the most important person in your life. So that's probably the one thing I would say. Start small and build up from there.
Yeah, it's just like saving money, isn't it? If you put £1 a day away, you'll have a lot more in the future. It's a good
Exactly.
analogy.
Exactly.
Sarah.
My piece would be there is gold in the negative. So don't turn away from it. I think the biggest learning is always in negative emotions, and it's about reframing them in your mind. I don't mean reframing them and instantly turning into a positive, but rather than seeing it and marking it in your mind as I'm feeling, I'm not good, I shouldn't feel this way. Invite that emotion in, sit it down, imagine having a cup of coffee with it and ask it, what are you here to tell me? What are you trying to teach me? What are you keeping me safe from? Because you will gain so much more learning and growth in those negative emotions. And they're just a form of feedback. In the same way that your body signals to you when you're hungry and you need to eat, those negative emotions are signaling to you this isn't working and something needs to change. So lean into that. Don't view it as a sign of failure or being broken. Welcome it in and say, like, thank you for showing up. How'd I learn from you?
Two incredible answers. Hey, it's not a competition, but at the end, I'm going to compile them all and see what happens. Yeah, because I think there's a book there somewhere. I can act like I'm really smart. um, just before we go, just want to tell people anything you want to draw their attention to and where they can find you, websites, social media, all of that shebang, books, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, really good. Me. You can
Mhm.
find us on our website, intuitive-psychology.com. We are also quite active on Instagram at we.r.ipa. Yeah, so if you did want to get in touch, but we have sort of free master classes and 4-day boot camps, free boot camp that we are running just now. I don't know when this is going out, so it starts on Monday. So if you have missed that and you did think, actually, I would have loved to be part of their 4-day boot camp, that is going to be available in the next week for people to get their hands on as well. And it just gives you a bit of a taster of some of our techniques. Yeah, I think that's it. Really, really, we are enrolling just now for our next cohort. which starts in April. So if anyone is listening to this and they think, I would love to actually, if you're a new coach or you're an existing coach and you want to upskill because maybe your current skill set isn't quite enough to work with people and take them where you want to take them, then we are enrolling for our next cohort. So you can apply via our website.
Any books that anyone could purchase with any knowledge in that would be helpful?
Yeah. So I'm the author of 2 books, Choose Happy and Find Your Flow, and they are available at multiple different retailers and online. You can visit choosehappythebook.com or findyourflowthebook.com to learn more.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Jill, the podcast, where can people find that?
The podcast is called She Loves Herself. And I do some short solo episodes on a Monday. They're called Monday Love Punches, 10 to 15 minutes, which are jam-packed. And then I also have guests that come on a Friday as well. Maybe need to get you on, Johnny.
Hey, I'd love that. That'd be great. It'd be nice to catch up again, and I'll try and share some wisdom.
Yeah, you've got lots of wisdom. I've written notes as you've been talking. It's been great.
Listen, this has just been fantastic. I've loved spending time with you today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insights. It's been absolutely invaluable. I'm excited to hear what people think of this episode. So thank you so much. And let's do it again. Let's all get together on Jill's podcast. Let's do that.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having us. It's been amazing.